Hey guys, this is Doug. Good morning all. It is March 25th, Friday. We're here in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm looking forward to an interesting episode. I've got my guest here, Jeff Armstrong. He is the multiple hat wearer at Hastings HVAC, and we will get into that. You have multiple hats, but you just drove in from Hastings.
Yep.
So those of you who know Nebraska will realize that's a 2.5-hour drive to be here by 9. So you had to get up early and get started, man. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're going to have a really interesting conversation today. I've been looking forward to it. Two things I want to mention before we get started. Today is National Gratitude Day. Actually, I just made that up, but there's another client calling. Sorry. Probably a finger on the floor somewhere that needs to be located. National Gratitude Day. I just want to say thank you to all of our sponsors. Look, these guys and gals know how much I appreciate them, but I can't say it enough, and so I'm going to say it again. CCS Group, Custom Concrete Specialists in Cheyenne, Wohlford. My buddy John Falewitch Construction Services. Jim Cover and all the consultants down at the Nebraska Department of Labor Onsite Consultation Group. Who does that leave? Building Omaha. This is a collaboration between the Nebraska Electrical Contractors Association and the IBEW, and our latest sponsor, our newest sponsor, WorkSafe Consulting, and my friend Danni Arroyo. She is going to get a formal introduction here in the very near future, and you can hear her story and hear about her business. But these folks are incredibly generous. I just tapped the table. Did you notice that?
I've seen that.
Holy shit, what has happened? So, yes, thank you to all of these incredibly generous sponsors. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Jeff and all of the folks who have volunteered their time to come and be on the show and share information, share experiences, just share things you've learned over the years. You've been doing this a long time, and you have we've talked briefly. You have some hilarious stories, man, so I'm looking forward to getting into that. The one last thing I am going to mention, just an observation. I woke up this morning. I tend to get up first thing in the morning and check my phone, and I know that's not a great practice. Most people tell you if you're dealing with stress or anxiety to not pick the phone up first thing in the morning. But as a safety consultant, I have to pick the phone up first thing in the morning and see what's happened overnight. And I had 2 texts. My buddy Mick, my long-term friend Mick Johnston, and Aaron Cerrone, our leadership pal, had both texted me of the passing of Louis Simmons, who is the founder and owner of Westside Barbell. I had the opportunity to train at Westside for a few years back in the 80s. It was an interesting chapter in my life, to say the least, but, to everyone associated with Louis and associated with Westside Barbell, my sincere condolences. Yeah, interesting. So, Jeff, thanks for coming, man. I appreciate you driving down so early in the morning, and we've been laughing for about the last half hour. I'm really excited. We actually hooked up on LinkedIn, which sounds kind of creepy. Mm-hmm. I hate to even say that, but you had posted something that I found very interesting about complacency, and something that you've been addressing in your company, and I would love to talk about that. You'd also mentioned something about labor challenges, labor shortage issues.
The hiring challenges. I know it's
everywhere.
Everywhere.
It is everywhere that I work, certainly. Yes. So I'm just going to shut up now. I'm going to turn it over to you. Give us a little bit about the backstory, how you got into this, a little bit about your experience with OSHA, which I found hilarious, and then let's talk about complacency.
Yeah, absolutely. It was 1999. Got bought out. A company I was working for. We just got purchased, and so it was a new company. A lot of changes, of course, with a merger like that. And they at the time I was a supervisor for a department. Been there for about 9 years, and they had a posting up for a safety coordinator position. No idea. Safety didn't exist in this plant at all. And
this is out in Hastings.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Back in '99, and I was thinking, man, this looks like fun. Yeah. And so I put my name on the list, interviewed, and everything else, and got the job. And it was a challenge. It was fun. Like we were talking, I was thinking about this on the way here. Very first program I ever presented in front of a group was the hearing conservation program. And I remember writing that. A lot of what we were writing was based on Cal OSHA because we had other facilities out on the West Coast. And so we had nothing really to go by. I mean, I went through POSH training and all those classes, and just trying to grab everything I could to take back. Reading books, this
was the 90s, safety in the 90s.
Late 90s and right West. Into 2000. And I remember doing that program and the resistance in that program. I'd been there for, probably 10, 11 years. I started on production, then I was a supervisor. And all these guys I worked with, now I'm telling them, hey, we got to wear hearing protection. And they were vocal. And they're like, no, we're not. And right. So there were some techniques that I had to use that I had to try. I didn't know if they were going to work. And, and it was trying to put real life situations in front of them and examples to show them this is why we need to do it. Don't just do it because we're telling you. This is why we need to do it. The headaches and the neck aches. And, after my shift, I get in my car, I got to turn the radio up. I go home, got to turn the TV up. I wake up in the morning and everything's loud and I got to turn it down. It's like, man, everything's closing up. That's why we got to wear the hearing protection. And that kind of got everything rolling. But, I was in the position for about 8 months. And, we had characters, we had jokesters. And so my boss and a few other department managers decided to tell me that OSHA was on site. That OSHA's running around the lot, and everything. And I'm thinking, well, they can't just wander around. They got to come in and report and do a formal introduction. So I'm running all over the facilities. We had two different divisions and big lots and everything else. And they just had me everywhere. And I'm looking for this guy. I think it probably went on for about an hour and a half.
Right. They're not supposed to be out on site without having done their opening conference.
Exactly. And so I'm all over the place, man. I'm covering
Sneaky
4
bastard.
blocks. Yes. And I finally get in, man, I'm hot. I'm mad. And my boss comes down. He's finally like, hey, they're not here. We were just playing with you, I'm like, oh, okay. So I go back to my office, get to work. Well, it's probably about a month later, and just got done doing lockout, tagout training. Boss comes into my office. He goes, hey, OSHA's here. You need to come to the conference room. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And about 5 minutes later, he comes back in. He's like, hey, OSHA's here. Get in the conference room. And I'm like, I don't have time. And I got all these other meetings. I got to go over here. I got to do this. And so he's like, now.
Right.
And so I grab my stuff, and I'm mad. And I go around the corner, and here's this 6'4" guy standing there. And I go walking up to him, just not happy. And he's like, hey, my name is Matt Thurlby. I'm with OSHA. And I said, you got a business card? And he goes, Jeff, I don't. And I go, you know what? I don't have time for this. I turn around and go back to my office. I'm just like, man, when are you guys going to give up? And
enough.
My boss comes in there again and, had some choice words, but he's like, get in that conference room now.
Oh, yeah, man.
So I get in there, and Matt's like, I am sorry. He goes, I'm literally out. But he pulls out his badge.
Yeah.
And at that time, I'm just, if I couldn't get underneath the table quick enough, man. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
That is such a good story.
And it was funny, because there was jokes. And I mean, even in our closing conference, my boss explained to him, here's what happened. Here's why. And he's like, nah, I got it. He goes, man, you came around that corner. You didn't look very happy. And he goes, I thought, oh, here we go.
We were going.
And I'm like, yeah, I wasn't. And I got 15,000 things to do, and I thought we were playing this game again.
That's
and
so good.
But it led to a great relationship. I talked to him a lot. And that was back.
And Matt has a good sense of humor.
Thank goodness.
Yes,
thank goodness.
Exactly.
But, we did. That was when the OSHA partnership agreement was going on.
Yeah.
And so we did a lot of work on that.
So you were in like plastic?
Yes.
You were making
extrusion.
PVC extrusion? Okay. Because we had a big focus on that for a while.
Oh yeah. Yep. And which
gets people in the door. That's
Yep. But it turned out great. In the first few years, it was tough. I mean, But once we got the programs going and really started to kind of figure out, I did, figure out the technique to use. It's like I've used this terminology before. We got to sell it. You got to sell it to your team. And, you can go out there and tell them, hey, I demand this and you got to do it this way, period. You're not going to get that involvement. And a lot of those cases that can lead to that complacency because you're trying to create robotic action just because you say so, and that's where complacency comes in. And on the other side, it comes in when you even try to get them onto a brother's keeper philosophy, and really thinking about what I'm doing and what you're doing and watching out for you and everything else. And that's a challenge. And
were you able to make headway in that? I mean, did you see progress in that?
We did.
Because I love that philosophy.
Yes.
But to get someone to be concerned about their coworker is challenging.
It's tough because they may not like the person.
Yeah.
And, so it's the pitch has always been, whether you like them or not, are you prepared to see what could happen if they stick their arm in a machine? You don't like them, but do you want to pick up their arm? Yeah. Or, here's the backside to a fatality or a dismemberment or whatever. Are you prepared? Whether you like them or not, you really want to see that person go through that. And I've told people, I said, if it doesn't bother you, we need to have a discussion on the side because there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that. And even through orientation, over the years, I've made it a point to ask questions or even get those new employees involved because that allows them to open up in those orientations. It's amazing the experiences that people have had, but they never really think about. It's almost like they put it on, away. I seen so-and-so, lose a finger or smash a finger or whatever. And I don't want them to be scared of those things, but I want them to remember those situations because that's how they're going to recognize if they're becoming complacent. Yeah. They're not going to fix it. I mean, we all suffer. There's no cure. It's recognizing.
And so you left that company. Now you moved.
Yeah,
to
I left that
Hastings
company.
HVAC?
I was at a couple other companies as plant manager, things like that. But since '99, I have directly been involved with safety, whether as general manager, plant manager positions. Coming over to HVAC, knowing a lot of people that are there. Vice president and that great people. Over the years, I've learned that I want to do what excites me, what's fun. And of course, safety to me is fun. You're trying to change people's mindset. And
thank you for saying that.
Yes. And, the biggest challenge it used to be up until this point, up until the COVID time, it was the new people that weren't quite as challenging as those that have been doing the job for 20 years because they're the ones that the complacency bug is just is crazy. I remember a story Matt told me one time, and it was a company here in Omaha, and he said, I went in and did an inspection. It was a machine shop, and they had shears and everything. And he said there was a gentleman, the owner, and this was, years ago. He's like, Jeff, I think he's probably in his 80s. And they had no guards on the shears at all. And he had asked a question why I was there. He goes, we don't have a problem. Nobody's been hurt. Why are you here? And he said, well, it's not really because somebody's been hurt. It's the risk that you have those exposures. Yeah. And it was sometime later, the gentleman, the owner, reached inside and he bumped the button and he had an injury.
No kidding.
And I've always remembered that story because it fits to even our environment today, where people that have been doing the same job over and over and over, that's where the complacency sits. It's like the person that commutes. Hastings, Grand Island, like we were talking, you driving, a lot of driving complacencies in our car, it's in our home. and, developing our programs continuously, not just creating and writing a program and developing a PowerPoint and then say, hey, we're done. It's a living document. Mm-hmm. And, I'm constantly working and adding and changing things. I tell employees, I'm like, the orientation that you guys just went through, it's going to change in a week. It's going to change in a month. Yeah. The next guy is going to come in and see something completely different. Because if I don't keep refreshing that, I get complacent. Mm-hmm. And we get comfortable. And, like I said, the team back there at HVAC, man, it's awesome. I mean, we've made so much progress. And they've made just leaps and bounds. It's the fear now of we're going to get comfortable. Yeah. And that's the drive. That's the motivation is, okay, what's next? Anticipating and trying to predict. And, you think about it, again, away from work, incorporating off-the-job safety. I want people to think about things even when they're away, mm-hmm. Mowing their yard, hearing protection or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I know I don't, myself, I don't wear earplugs when I'm mowing or, things like that, but it's there. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about it.
It's in your mind.
Yes. And that's all we can do. You just got to keep things out in front of them that is, going to be a trigger.
I love that. Well, life is just a series of risk assessments. Mm-hmm. Everything that we do all day long, whether it's at work or home, is a risk assessment. Yep. Do I pull my car out now? Do I mow the grass? I mean, all of those things. How do I do those things? And so, I've been speaking to a lot of companies that are getting ready for their season to start. So they wanted to have some safety conversation before the onset of their season. Maybe they're an outdoor company, paving, landscaping, whatever. So I've done a few presentations to groups, and I'm talking about just like these little incremental changes. I mean, I'm not sure that we can revolutionize our safety programs overnight, but if we can make incremental changes individually, because when you do that risk assessment and you think, hell with it, I'm busy, and you walk by that unsafe condition, or you see somebody doing something unsafely and you don't say anything, you've obviously given consent to that, right? I mean, yep. Silence gives consent, according to Plato and my son, or my son said Plato said that, or whatever. Yeah. But, I mean, if we can just improve a little bit, stop and pick that cord up, or stop and say something. Hey, man, go grab a pair of safety glasses, or just incremental improvements. I think that we can start to chip away at some of those complacency issues, perhaps. I mean, that brother's keeper thing.
Yes.
I think it has value.
Well, and thinking about the operational side, like what we were talking about, I love safety only primarily because of the positions that I've been in, the people I've worked for have allowed me to venture out into other areas of our operation that focusing on complacency, learning other aspects of the job, the safety is more of a savings. There's no revenue generated in our position, but it's a savings. And as a plant manager in that, you can get complacent on that when you focus so much on the money coming in. We got to look at the money that we're saving as well. Absolutely. And but to what you were talking about, the complacency really hit me in regards to really incorporating it into our programs at a Sunday morning at Walmart with my wife. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget it. And of course, you go to Walmart, you're going to be a people watcher.
Mm-hmm. That's why we go, man.
I always tell my wife, I said, one of these times we're going to go in our pajama bottoms, and that way we blend in, and we don't get looked at so weird. Yep. And we're standing over in the produce area, and my wife had gone over and there was 2 bags of celery left, and she'd grabbed one bag. The sprayers had just gone off, and so I'm down at the end, and I'm just doing my normal, are we about done? This is driving me crazy, and I'm watching people. And this lady comes around the corner out of the bread aisle. She grabs that bag of celery that had somehow filled with water, and of course it's perforated, but it had filled up with water. Mm-hmm. And so she's walking, she goes by me and around the corner, and I look down and there's water, a stream of water on the floor. Mm-hmm. And this all happened in such a smooth, rapid motion. This Walmart employee goes walking by, and they look down, they see the water, and they step over it just as these two little ladies are coming around the little aisle there that has cupcakes on it and everything.
Oh, geez.
And this one, just before I could even move, this lady goes, "Oh, watch out, there's water on the floor." And so I seen that, and I'm like, man, that's what we do at work. That's exactly what we do at work, because that employee was probably asked or instructed, hey, go get this, do a price check on this loaf of bread. And they avoided that hazard. They seen it because she stepped over it, but they didn't say anything to anybody around them. And I'm thinking, man, that's what goes on at work. You know, we see it. The hardest part is addressing it and saying something. And, you know, there was no looking out for the person behind them or anything. And so it just, you know, it was a Sunday morning, and my mind's already going, how can I do this? And at that time, I was working at DuPont, which, you know, were like the founding fathers of safety. And absolutely, it was like, I loved it. It was a blast working for them. And I remember coming in that next week, and I'm telling my boss about it. And he grew up on a farm and everything, and he's kind of rolling his eyes at me. And I'm like, just trust me. And I'm putting this program together and everything. And after we did the presentation, he came up and he's like, I got to tell you this story. He goes, it clicked. He goes, my dad and I are standing out by an irrigation motor one day on the farm. We're talking to the farmer, you know, from across the road. And we're all standing there talking. And he goes, I looked over and the irrigation motor's running, and I noticed the belt flapping. Well, as a car guy, if you hear a belt slap, first thing we do is we grab the belt, see how loose it is. And he goes, Jeff, he goes, I remember I reached to grab that belt while it's running. And just as before my hand got in there, I pulled it back on. What am I doing? I go, there's your complacency. You were comfortable around that. I go, you put somebody that has never been around that, there's an exposed fan, you know, this irrigation motor's running, they'd be standing there, especially if they have a safety background, they're going to look at that going, yeah, there's a lot of open hazards, a lot of pinch points, you know, and you've been around it, so you're comfortable. And so over the years, you think about that, guys running presses and shears and all those, driving forklifts, driving cars, as you know, for a living, those kind of things, and even being at home and the things that they're doing at home and everything. You get comfortable in what you're doing, you know, climbing into a tree stand, you know, those kind of things. If you're not thinking, that's when it gets you. And
you covered so much territory in that, man. There was so many things that you said that and one of the problems that I have is as I'm listening to you speak, I'm thinking, I want to talk about that. I want to mention that. You covered a lot of shit there, man. One of the things that I loved that you said moments ago was you were involved in safety as the plant manager or the operations manager of these facilities where you were employed, and that is such a critical piece. I think there has been a habit of thinking of safety as something that the safety guy does, and I'll take care of my stuff, you take care of the safety, and that is such a misinterpretation of how this is supposed to work. So I appreciated that immediately. The places that I go that do the best, the plant manager actually drives the safety. They might have a safety guy, but the top man in that facility, or woman in that facility, makes everything happen. Without question. So managers need to understand that. They drive this. They should be as intimately familiar with this stuff as the safety person, if not more so, frankly. The other thing you said that I thought was really interesting was that, you know, this example that you gave in the Walmart. I use an example very similar to that, man. I have been talking recently about when I go into the grocery store, there's that little runner mat. It's always the transition period where you're going from the carpet where you come into the entry onto the tile or the linoleum, whatever that is. And they put that mat down there in hopes that maybe you dry your feet off or whatever when you're coming in from outside. And the mat is always flipped over. You know, the carts roll over it, it flips it over. People kick it, it flips over. And I've become the guy that flips it back down flat because I can't walk past it. So I walk in, I see the mat flipped over, I kind of straighten it out, I kick it back down flat, and then I walk in. When I'm coming back out at the end, it's kicked over again because somebody kicked it over. And, you know, I have an 85-year-old mother that goes to the grocery store, and I am just praying that somebody will flatten the mat before she walks in and trips and hurts herself. You know, so my comment has become, are you the person that kicks the mat up, or are you the person that flattens the mat back down? It's kind of simple, and we all see it.
Yep.
Just like the analogy that you gave of the water on the floor. You step over it, ooh, that was a close one, and then keep walking.
It's forgotten.
And there are people behind you. You know there are people coming behind you. And so that is such an interesting illustration, man. I really appreciate that.
I'd shared that story. It had been a few years ago, and I remember talking to the group, and I said, it's kind of like driving down the interstate, and there's a tire on the road. I go, who pulls over to pull that tire off of the road? You know, nobody. I said, you know, granted, you're preventing one hazard and creating two or three more by pulling over to the side of the road, you know, the cars behind you and those kind of things. And I never forgot this one either. This couple weeks went by, and this kid come in, and he goes, couldn't wait to tell you this story, Jeff. He goes, so my wife and I are heading to Hastings, and I'm going over the overpass over 80, and there's a big chunk of tire on the road. And he goes, I look back in my mirror, not a car, clear back by Bosselman's. And he goes, I pulled over. My wife's like, what are you doing? And he jumps out, runs over, pulls that thing, throws it on the side of the shoulder, and got back in. He goes, wait till I tell Jeff this, because he says nobody ever does that. Right. And he was excited to tell me. He's like, so cool. Hey, he goes, and you know, and he leaves, and I'm like, okay, there's a win. You know,
it's registered with someone.
Yes, there was a breakthrough right there.
It is a win. That's definitely a win. Yep. Good for you, man.
Yep.
Oh, man. So this complacency thing that we're talking about, and we talked about this earlier, I'm not sure there's a solution necessarily, but have you developed a program to try to make inroads into this? What do you do to try to address complacency? Do you have any? To
recognize just to be aware of it. You know, whether we're driving, it becomes a habit, and the driving part really came in. I remember years ago, it worked out perfect because I was doing safety training this particular morning. The day before, we had a supervisor that called in, says, hey, I can't make it to work. I hit a deer this morning. And so the next morning, he's there. He had to go get a different car and everything. And so I pointed him out, and I said, so when you were driving to work that morning, when you hit the deer, you were taking the Locust Road out of Grand Island. I said, how are you driving? He's like, yeah, you know, I'm just the usual, just same old route. I'm just tootling along. Deer comes out of nowhere. Boom, smacked it. I said, when you drove to work this morning in your new car, I go, what were you doing different? He goes, man, I'm scanning the road.
Oh, yeah.
I said, there you go. I go, you see how we can get complacent in just every little thing we do every day. And I go, it's, you know, it kind of falls into that category of taking it for granted. You know, I know the route, nothing's ever happened before. I go, I can remember an injury that was scary. It didn't turn out to be as bad as it appeared that night for the night shift, but I got a call about 11:30 at night from my supervisor, and he's freaking out, and nothing would shake this guy, and he was losing it on the phone. He goes, hey, this kid just slit his throat. He goes, we got him in the truck. He's going to the emergency room. So I get up, head up there. By the time I got there, they had already stitched him up. They had to go in. It was not the artery. It was a vessel. It doesn't have the volume, but it has the pressure. Okay. And so it appears there was a spray going on. Sewed it back together, stapled the neck. He's fine. So I'm sitting with this kid a couple days later in my office, and I'm going through the incident investigation and just kind of looking for a root cause. And the challenge is figuring out what went wrong, and something that we've been doing for years, and that is using banding to band the pallets, steel banding.
Sure.
And then he made the comment. He said, he goes, I know what we started doing is standing off to the side to ratchet the banding because the banding kept breaking, and when it breaks, it travels straight line. It would snap back. So guys were getting hit in their safety glasses or their hat or cutting their shirt or whatever. And I remember looking at him going, so there was a situation that we could have easily prevented. You guys knew about it, but nobody. So when I met with nobody said anything. So when I met with everybody, they're like, God, because we were at a point where we weren't having recordable injuries. We had, I won't say we had, gone over the hill or anything, but we had made massive amounts of progress. And they're like, oh my gosh, we adjusted thinking we were taking care of it, but it was really a Band-Aid. And I said, yeah, because I got a simple solution. We're no longer going to use steel banding. So we brought in nylon, got rid of all the steel, got pneumatic, or I think they were cordless banders. And but I said it took that incident to address this hazard. And I said, there's complacency.
Yeah.
There we're comfortable, and then something happens, so we make just a slight adjustment, and they forget about it. And when the banding broke, it hit him in the neck.
No kidding.
And I said, man, there's our warning.
Yeah.
I go, that's our warning. We got to do something, but we can't get comfortable like
That's
that.
it.
Those are the things that happen.
And that really is what complacency is just comfort.
Yes.
Self-satisfaction.
Yep,
I know what I'm doing. I've got this. I've done it 1,000 times. And that is a dangerous place. It's interesting because, you and I have both read that book, The Power of Habit. Charles Duhigg, it's an interesting book. He talks about habits. And Katrina Bishop actually alluded to this last time when she was on a previous episode, that habits are basically kind of like a brain survival mechanism. I mean, your brain only has so much energy. I mean, there's only so many, so much glucose or ketones or lactate, whatever your brain fuels itself with for a given day. And so we go into these habit loops in order to preserve energy, I think, in our brain, in our decision-making process. It's just like we talked about this. When I leave my house, get in my car, I open the garage door as I step out into the garage. I open the garage door, I walk around, my head's down. I usually throw my computer in the back seat or whatever. I get in my car, I back out without looking, put it in reverse, back out, shut the garage door, pull out into the street, leave. I get to work, and oftentimes I'm like, how the hell did I get here? I don't even remember that trip. Did I put the garage door down? God dang, I don't remember if I put the garage door down. I mean, it is literally a habit. And we can survive that thousands of times in a row until there's some variable introduced that isn't normally there. Like the guy that parks his car on the street across from your driveway and you put it in reverse and you back out and bam, I didn't even look, or in the workplace, I do the same thing 1,000 times over and over. I'm good at it. And then there's a variable introduced somehow. Somebody left a cart somewhere where it normally wouldn't go, or there's a tool sitting on a machine that normally wouldn't be there. And all of a sudden, this variable that we don't control is introduced, and we're not paying attention. We're in this habit loop, and bam, we've got an incident. And so being aware of the variables, I think, is the key component. It's okay to use habits. I mean, that's how we survive driving down the highway, just like I've done that 1,000 times. Shit, I already passed Grand Island. I didn't even know I was through Lincoln.
Exactly.
Exactly. I mean, it's weird sometimes.
Well, and a lot of things too, back to your question, it's hard to, you're driving from Omaha to North Platte, it's hard to take a different route because you're looking to get to point A to point B.
Yeah.
In the workplace, as much as we can, and some of the challenges that I like to pose to the team is find a better way, find a different way to do it. Let's make sure it's safe. Let's analyze everything, but find a different way and a better way, incorporating efficiency challenges into the workplace. This is where this is where you change your hat from the safety guy to a continuous improvement or whatever. Challenge your team to find a better way to do the job. And, I think back to the pipe plant, and you were talking about this in one of your past episodes of safety incentives. And I've never really understood why I would pay you $50 to not cut your finger off. And it's really, because you know what you get, which is why I incorporated this. And, we had multiple locations, and I think I was the only one in the beginning to do this. You were suspended if you didn't report a first aid or an injury or a near miss. If I found out that you didn't report it, you were suspended automatically. There was no progressive discipline, nothing. It was what I was trying to drive is I can't fix what I don't know is broke.
Yeah.
And so if you tell me it's broke, we're going to fix it. And so if you cut your finger, well, what'd you cut it on? How'd you do it? And so, I was putting that effort into addressing those things because you get warnings. Here's your pyramid thing.
Right.
You get small cut, small cut, small cut, and then all of a sudden, bam, it's a laceration or I'm carrying your finger out.
That's a great observation. You get warnings. We get warnings oftentimes.
But challenging them to find a better way to do it, throwing that incentive into that bucket by going, hey, come to me with an idea that could improve the productivity or the efficiency, or, we get 300 widgets. If we can get 400, propose an idea how we can do that, still keeping safety at the top. Mm-hmm. But to achieve that, there's your incentive.
Yeah.
That's worth a reward.
And that requires focus.
Yes.
You can't improve a process if you're not paying attention to it,
yep.
or if you're just kind of going through a habit loop.
And so it trains their mind to, well, this is the way I always used to do it. But if I find a different way, now you're going to help avoid that complacency. The problem is it takes the safety guy or the team to constantly be looking at that. Well, you think about it, as a plant manager, you're constantly looking for better ways to be more efficient, to improve your bottom line and those kind of things. Throw that in. Mm-hmm. It's already there. You're already looking for it. Just expand that a little bit more. Get into the safety realm of things and try to incorporate those together. You're going to find that they're not going to get comfortable. They're not going to be robotic in their day-to-day. Find a better way to do it. How can we do this differently? Mm-hmm. Or, what do you see? And then look for the hazards associated with doing something different. That works great. Going from here to North Platte, I could tell you get on Highway 6. Mm-hmm. You're going to go, I just went from 5 hours to 9 hours. Right. So, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I do get that.
So that's where you just have to learn to recognize it. I do it. I probably did it this morning. Because of the way the traffic was and everything else, and my mind was on how much trouble am I going to be in, because my wife knows I'm about 3 miles away from Cabela's.
Oh, right.
She knows exactly what's going to happen.
Are you going to go there after this? Good for you, man.
You know it.
Good.
And so I'm thinking, man, I got to come up with some good excuses to get out of this. And so thinking of those excuses probably caused me to get complacent on the drive here, because it's just pointed east. And
it is, man.
There you go.
The other part of this is, habits aren't necessarily bad. Mm-mm. They're kind of an energy preservation mechanism. It's okay, but I think we need to realize that if something has changed in the environment or something has changed in the equipment or procedure, that there's a possibility that this could go bad. So maybe before we drop into that habit loop, we just need to make sure things are consistent. Mm-hmm. Like, look to make sure there's not a car. And I'm only using this hypothetically. I never actually slammed into the neighbor's car, as far as anybody's, at least to what I'm admitting to.
You probably have neighbors going, that's where that dent came from.
Oh, God damn it, was him. But none of them listen to this podcast.
Okay.
But if I look, at least, the same thing can be said about backing out over, like, your children's toys, mm-hmm. or, God forbid, backing out over your child.
Yep.
Something like that. There are consequences to these behaviors at times. And so I think if you just look, it's like that 360 walk around of your vehicle before you pull away. It seems trivial or time consuming to some people, but if you get in the habit of doing those things, if you get in the habit of looking around your vehicle or looking down into the driveway, something before you fall into that habit, you can hopefully identify changes or, exposures or something before they happen. So I think you're right, man. And I'm not sure there is a solution because I think habits are a natural occurrence, but I think that awareness and that challenge to constantly be looking at ways to improve the process can help us maintain focus a little bit. I think that's a brilliant solution.
And you look at it now, because it's almost like we're in a valley now because so many businesses with labor, the way it is, they got guys, they're wearing different hats. And so they're learning something new. You may have a safety guy who's doing HR now, or the HR person's doing accounts payable, whatever. So they're learning something new. So it's like, okay, well now they're learning something new, but what are they missing on the other side? And so it's kind of a double edge because I'm looking at that going, man, we're challenged in trying to get people to come in and trying to get them to work 40 hours. And a lot of that's, they've had 2 years of free money and all that. And so now you're bringing them in. There's one challenge of getting them back in. I know we've even talked at work. I said, man, why don't we, it's almost like we have to start a process to acclimate to the 40-hour work week for some of these folks that have not worked. And maybe go 20 and then 30 and then 40 hours after 3 weeks. It's like, man, there's something.
Kind of a time work hardening program or something.
Because it's back in the day we used to joke about that, and here we are.
Well, we use that with heat and other issues. We kind of condition our employees to be working in the heat, or we should be.
Yep.
That's coming up here soon. That's an interesting approach, man. But you're right. To get someone to go from 0 to 40 hours a week is remarkably difficult.
Yes. Never thought we'd be looking at this kind of situation. But
I know. And there are a lot of, so you said a couple things there too. The multitasking challenge, that can be difficult for some people. Some people are just, give me a task. I'm good at one task, but when I've got multiple things going on, they all suffer. I think there's some evidence to support that. Some people love the challenge of multiple tasks and they can handle it. Not a problem. But some people are not really good at that. The issue that I've seen is this increased utilization of temps and the challenges that we have from a safety perspective with temps. Temp services are desperate to find people that they can even use as temps to send into facilities. Companies that are resorting to temps oftentimes are really struggling to find people that can do that work. And then you've got that do I invest a lot of time and money right up front doing orientation or providing equipment for these temps? So oftentimes companies will say, they're only going to be here for a few days anyway. Probably not even going to come back after lunch. So screw it, I'm not doing that. And that's a really dangerous road too, man. There's a lot about that concerns me.
Saving a couple hours could lead to days, weeks, months, years.
Yeah. Is that, are you guys, now your guys are probably trained, to be doing HVAC. They're coming through a program typally, or they have some experience, or are you pulling guys off the street?
Yeah, when they come in, and we've got, when I created that orientation program, I incorporated the employee development program that we created because there's so many different aspects to what we do. It's not, we custom build. There's no conveyor. There's no robotic. The guys told me when I first got there that we're kind of the American chopper for heating because it's all custom built. It's all commercial. We don't do any residential. So these are big units, but they're custom. Yeah, they call us. Our engineering department puts it together to fit the customer's needs, whatever they need, whether, CFM, based on CFM, what type of heating they're wanting. And it's all custom. Wow. It's not a conveyor where it runs down the line.
I love that. That's probably helpful.
It's the same thing over and over. It's the tasks that the guys are performing some of the tasks. That is why I preach the complacency, because they can get comfortable with that. But yeah, it's a variety.
So they're always building something new and customized, but they're doing the similar tasks over and over.
Yeah,
that can become
within that
repetitive.
But no, we bring them in. As I show them in our orientation towards the end is the employee development program that we've created. Because there's the wiring side, reading blueprints, running machinery, of course the hand tools, all the way up to being a tester, because every one of our units are tested before it goes out to the customer. And so going through those things with them, it's to hope to grab their attention a little bit. Because a lot of times, some folks, they're like, yeah, I like blueprints. I like to read this, or I like the challenge, or I like wiring because I'm OCD. So I want my wiring, because we are very particular in how you open up our panels, and we want everything all nice. And the guys do a great job with it.
The OCD guys love that. Oh, yeah, man, I've got one of those at home.
And the attempt is, hey, do you want to do drafting? Is that something that floats your boat? Well, we're going to get you into it. We'll train you in there.
So you do the training.
Yeah.
You will bring guys in raw and do training for it. That's really cool.
OTJ. So, we kind of have that mindset of, hey, let's train them to be great employees, but treat them in the way that they never want to leave. And that's kind of the motto is we want to develop people that they could go anywhere they want. It's just,
but they just want to stay there.
We want them to stay there. We got guys that have been there 45 years.
Oh, that's cool.
And and some. I think we have one that's still working. That's 50.
Really?
50 years.
50-year guy?
Loves it. Oh, he wouldn't. He's the most reliable employee. I mean, he's there every day.
And he's an artist, probably.
Oh yeah, he loves it. Oh yeah, he's very particular in how things go and how he does this and how he does that and everything. And he's doing they're smaller tasks, but yeah, he loves it.
That's really cool.
And so yeah, even if they're a temp agency, it's worth the time for me to spend those hours to go through orientation, because that gives me that chance to pick their brain and try to resurface some things that maybe they forgot about forklift safety or lockout, tagout, or those kind of things. And then I attack. And I'm like, all right, here's why. And this is what happened. This is what you should have done, or this is what they should have done. And this is what we want to do. And this is what we want you to do, and to be a part of it. It's not a me being the cop. It's all of us looking out.
Well, it's interesting you say that too, and you use the term to be a part of it, because I think temps oftentimes feel isolated. They're not part of the team necessarily. They're not treated like part of the team. Yep. They can be somewhat shunned perhaps, or whatever. They're not included. They don't have a click, when they come in. And so I think that can lead to problems. So I think making a concerted effort to include them, to try to determine whether or not they have aptitude or an interest in what you're doing, so that you can look at, perhaps, I don't know if you would then take a temp and make them a full-timer at some person or at some point. But
no,
that's interesting.
Definitely a possibility. It's showing up, and it goes back to the pre-COVID conversations that were had.
That's how we will define the world.
Oh yeah, and I say that knocking on wood, because who knows what tomorrow's news is going to bring. But
I know.
Going back to that point, I remember a conversation that I was having with my boss, and it was like, going into this, what concerns me is companies are going to find a better way to do the job with less people, because these people are they're vanishing. They're staying home. They're scared. They don't want to go out and touch a door handle and those kind of things. Companies are gonna find a way to survive, and much like we are, it's just because we're custom. We need those good people that are going to be there and be dedicated, and there's some that are going to be able to create automation and merge things together to still finish the task, but there's a lot of them out there that they can't, and we're in that, and that's the challenge. This is it's been something I've never experienced in
in a long
20 some years of management, or 30 if you look at supervisory experience. I don't remember this kind of challenge where you're just constantly scratching. And that's why I reached out to you. Chris Bryant, he was another one. Even when I was finishing up my OSHA outreach training, I was picking his brain. It's like, what can we do?
That's an interesting brain to pick, man.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I agree. Love Chris.
Yep.
Yeah, he's a good man.
Yes.
That's true. So what do you got going forward? I mean, anything that you have in the works from a complacency standpoint? The program.
It's a lot of the stuff that we're doing now, because we're seeing folks moving into different departments, and a lot of that's coming from hey, do you have an interest? I have a document that I go out there. Usually, a new employee, I'll let them be out there for 4-5 months, and then I'm going to go out there with a document. Hey, what excites you? What do you like? And I tell them up front, hey, if aviation is your thing, I can't help you. But if you like, operating a laser, forming metal, or putting things together, seeing it from a pile of nuts and bolts and steel to a unit that's generating heat. Now we know what excites you, and trying to focus on things that they may want. You take a guy that I hate wiring, and try to force him into doing pre-wire. You know what you're going to get. They're not going to enjoy it. And I think I've demonstrated over the years that if you do what you enjoy doing, you don't feel like you work. And that's kind of our attempt is focusing on, hey, what do you really like? What just put a list together of things. And so what that does is moving them into a different area. And there's your break. Is this guy may have been running this piece of equipment for 4 or 5 years. Now he's doing something different. And then you bring him back into that environment periodically to have him look at things, writing SOPs. I do that, standard operating procedures, and then incorporating the safety into it. And trying to do that, we got another gentleman that does work instructions. And we kind of blend those together, getting people involved in that as well, because then they can identify, something they may be missing during that function. Because once it's written, I walk back and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this job based on everything, all the details that we wrote down. And I may go, step 1 is hit this, and step 2 is hit that. And he's like, oh, wait, no, don't. Well, okay, this is wrong. This is wrong. So now we got to start all over again. Yeah. It gets them thinking, and it's amazing. And there's, to them or anybody around, may appear small. To me, it's like we just broke up the routine. Might be for a day or two, but at least we broke it up. Every little victory is something. And
agreed.
But it requires that effort. And having others get involved in that, if they really understand what's going on behind it, it helps.
It does.
I can see it help.
Yeah, no doubt. And I love the idea of having someone who steps away from a job for a while, come back and look at it again through a different lens, perhaps. Maybe they've been away from it for a few months. Now they come back and look at it. What are we missing?
Yep.
That's a great suggestion, too. And the fact that you even care what the guys like doing is really impressive.
Yeah, it's trying. It's, again, if we can get them to do something that they enjoy, that they're going to like doing, man, that's a double win.
Yeah.
Doesn't always work.
No.
It doesn't always work, but, you're never going to hit 100% of everybody.
Yeah.
Just absolutely can't wait to get to work every day.
I know. But, if you look at, people that write about management and leadership and things, one of those questions is always, do you have the opportunity to do something that every day that fulfills you or that you love doing or whatever? That's in almost every publication I've ever read about the workplace. And most workplaces, honestly, I don't think really care if you enjoy your job or if there's something else there that you would prefer to try, at least experience. I'm not sure they do that. And
Complacency.
Yeah, again.
It's their...
we're comfortable and it's working. We've got widgets coming out the door, so don't tamper with it.
Yep. Don't fix what's not broke.
Kind of this organizational or institutional complacency almost.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yep.
It's incredible stuff, man. It sounds like you've made some real headway into addressing some of these things. I'd love to hear about it again at some point. I don't even know if we're running up on time. We're running up on time. It's almost exact.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy how fast that hour goes?
Yes.
This is complacency for me. I just like mumble and talk and listen.
It was like 10 minutes of conversation like earlier that we covered so much.
Man.
And, yeah.
It's always that way. It's fascinating stuff. And I think everyone struggles with this complacency topic. So what is your take-home message about complacency? Give me the elevator version. What should people be doing to try to address complacency?
Real quick, something.
Do something.
Yeah. That's really what it is. Is there anything wrong? Leaving it alone, that's you're wrong. And it's like I said to you, in my reaching out to everybody, you and Chris and everybody going, man, what is everybody doing? That alone is, hey, that's something. May not get get answers, but like we were talking earlier, just talking about these things, it gets your mind generating. The drive home, it'll be, as I'm focusing on where I'm going,
of course you are.
thinking about something different, thinking about a different way, like it's like you said, man, I'm always thinking about it. I wake up.
It doesn't turn off, man.
My wife's even made comments over the years of, everything all right? Yeah, I have an idea.
Right.
And when they come to you, whether it's, in the woods or driving or when we're trying to sleep. And, the takeaway is there's really no wrong other than not doing anything.
That's a great comment.
And, something is better than nothing. And getting the team involved, asking the team. Some of these guys that you think, oh, yeah, they just cut wood or whatever, or build that widget, go and ask them. I look back, that comment I was making about going out there going, hey, I'm not going to reward you for not cutting your finger off, but I will if you come up with great ideas. Oh, it was flooded. I got to the point, I remember I was even telling my boss back in those days, I'm like, man, this might have been a mistake, because I'm like, I got guys out there that know how to do tattoos that are drawing 3D models of what they need on their machine and giving it to my maintenance department. And my maintenance department is going, geez, we don't even have to submit this for drawings. They already have it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, they're the guys, they're the pros, man. They're working, but now you got a guy who can do a 3D drawing. Put it out there. You're going to have somebody that's going to come up with an idea. And it's just getting those ideas to roll and not being afraid to say, hey, I got a question. It's like being the safety guy for 20 years. I'm sure there's things that you ask. I know I ask. I'm not afraid to ask a question. Right. Whether lockout, tagout, or whatever that I've lived and breathed is a very big pet peeve of mine. There's still questions. Yeah. There's still things that we could do to make it better, and it's just you can't end it. Right. There's your mistake.
I think yes, I would agree. Not doing anything is the problem with complacency or with addressing complacency. Just being complacent.
Yeah.
To some degree and allowing it to happen. I think that's good advice, man. Everybody needs to be aware that it exists in every work environment, and it probably helps sustain work to some degree. We just need to be aware that there is a potential cost of complacency, and so at least be aware of it. Do something. Yep. That's a good advice, man. That probably sums up
simple.
Safety in general.
Yes,
just do something.
Yes.
I agree. Man, it's been a pleasure. Really interesting stuff. I hope we can do this again at some point.
Absolutely.
And the stories about Thurlby are always welcome.
Yes.
So I will probably end up having to call Thurlby and remind him of this. I'm sure he will remember.
I'm sure he will. Yeah, that's cool. That was funny.
Jeff, thanks for coming into town.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Again, man, safety people are the most generous people I've ever met. Everybody's willing to share. It's not proprietary. We're all struggling with the same things. The fact that you were willing to drive 2 hours and come and share this says a lot about you as a safety professional. I appreciate it. Everybody have a good weekend. Keep the faith. Keep doing what we do. It is a noble undertaking. So talk to you next week. Later.